down, yeah. I've been feeling so down, yeah. Can you tell me why? Can you tell me why I'm down?
Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how I set up my bullet journal for April. Since it is now officially spring, I thought it would be fun to do this herb garden theme, and I'm going to be doing a lot of watercolor this month and also some interesting layouts, so let's get started.
Drown myself inside the juice, yeah.
Before getting started in my bullet journal, I went ahead and practiced a lot of different herb illustrations. I followed a video by Shada Campbell, and I'll link that one down below because she does a really good job of explaining how to draw lots of different types of herbs. So I just made sure I got the hang of those because we're going to be doing a lot of these illustrations. Once I felt comfortable drawing those, I am starting in my bullet journal now, and for the cover page for this month, I started off by doing this rectangle frame shape, and I did a little nail and string at the top so that it's clear that it's a frame as well. And I'm gonna get started here drawing in a bunch of those different herbs that I told you about. I'm going for a really neat organization of the herbs in this first cover page and following a loose grid of 9 and leaving some space in the center for the April title. I'm not going to go too in depth about how I'm drawing each of these herbs because I really did just follow Shada's tutorial, and she really just is the queen of floral illustrations and is really good at explaining how to do them. So if you're looking for a really awesome teacher for that, you can go check out her channel. Once I'm done drawing in all these different herbs, I also wanted to label them, and this kind of reminds me of those really pretty floral specimen pages that have pretty illustrations in them. Now that my illustrations are done, I'm going to go in with my watercolor, and I'm using my Derwent Inktense paint pan here, and I'm just going to go in and try to create as many different shades of green as I can from this palette. Since we're doing all herbs this month, and that's mostly foliage and not a lot of flowers, I just want to make sure that there's still variation in the different shades of the one color that I'm using. But I found this pretty easy to do with the colors in this paint pan. I just added blues and yellows as I needed to, and you're able to get a lot of different shades. There are a couple of herbs that I'm also able to add little pops of color, like the dill and the chives, because the flowers for these are yellow and purple, and I think that adds just a little bit of extra interest as well. Moving on to the monthly calendar page, I'm starting off with a really large cursive header at the top, and then I'm going to outline the shape for the calendar grid and also fill in all the dates. Once this is done, I'm going to be creating an entire border along the right side of all of the different herbs that I showed you on the first page, and instead of going for a very orderly and neat appearance, this time we're going to try to intertwine it so that it looks like a garden or a forest of herbs. I really want this to look as organic as possible and like it's an actual garden where things kind of grow over each other and there are herbs overlapping. And you'll see that when I drew the calendar grid, I also left some empty spaces where the herbs would overlap over top of that calendar grid as well. So now I'm just going to get started inking in all of these little pencil sketches that I have. I just wanted to make sure I had a nice layout and distribution of the herbs, so that's why I did this all in pencil first. Drawing in all of these herbs does take a little bit of time, but not as much as you would think. If you're looking for something that takes a little less time, I would concentrate on herbs like sage and chives because those are super easy to draw and don't require a lot of detail or leaf veining. But I also like to include some of those more complicated detailed ones like the mint. I found out that that was actually one of my favorite ones to draw because it has those larger serrated leaves and a lot of veining, and I think that that adds a lot of interest to the illustrations. I also really liked drawing thyme because I like the way that you can sort of create these curved vines and really use that to manipulate any space that you need to fill. I was originally going to keep the illustrations on this page just blank as a black and white illustration, but I did end up going in after the fact and I painted it in with watercolor just as I did for the cover page, and I really like how that turned out, so I'm glad I went ahead and did that. It just brings more life to this page, which I think is really important when you want to make something look very alive and spring-like. And I also finished off the left side of this page with a strip of washi tape. Next, I'm going to be doing some habit and mood trackers. I just turned my journal over on its side, and I'm going to be running my trackers along the long edge of these pages. So the first page I have my habit tracker, and then the second one's going to be the mood tracker. Again, I just did a really large script header, and then I added in some all caps lettering right on top of that, just because I thought it needed something a little bit extra to dress it up. I just went back in and made those letters a little bit bolder because they were kind of getting lost in that color. And then along the left side of this habit page, I'm going to write in a few different things that I want to keep track of, and then next to each of those, I'm just going to number 1 through 30 for each day of the week. I'm adding in some colored stripes for every other category, just because then it's easier to go along those lines and not get too confused. Then for my mood tracker, I just made a simple graph by numbering 1 through 30 along the bottom, and on the right side, I have this scale of like happy to sad emojis, and I thought it would be really fun instead of doing a simple line graph. I would really turn this tracker into a garden of herbs. Each day I can choose a different herb and kind of make it as tall as my mood is, and at the end I'll have this nice neat little garden of different herbs, and I think it'll look really cute. And I also finished off this page with a strip of washi tape. I like how orderly the habit tracker is. I'm not sure if I'll actually use this because I'm not good at using habit trackers, but I just wanted to give you guys an idea since I don't always include these in my monthly layouts, but you guys might like to see that, so I just thought it would be fun to show you guys how to do that. Now moving on to my weekly layouts, and the first couple of layouts, I wanted to show you a Dutch door option. I did one of these a couple of months ago and I really like how it came out, and I think a lot of you guys did too. So I wanted to do another option with this new theme. I'm starting off by doing a border of herbs, just like you saw me do in the monthly calendar spread. So I'm doing this all along the left side of that first spread. And once that drawing was done, I went ahead with my watercolor paint and painted all of that in. So I have this nice neat little border on the left side of the page. By the way, this is the first time I'm using watercolor directly into my bullet journal like this, and I have to say I'm really impressed with how this journal held up. I didn't have any warping, pilling, or bleeding at all. So if you're looking to do a lot of watercolor in your journal, I would definitely check out the journal I'm using, which is the Scribbles That Matter notebook. Then on the right side of the page, I'm going to be cutting it. So I'm first starting off by just cutting a straight strip, and then I'm just going to kind of like sketch in the shape of the border of that illustration that I just made and just trim that out with my scissors. So I end up with this flap that's tailored specifically to my illustration. And before I get on with the right side, I'm just going to fill in the days of the week for this spread. I'm doing some really quick and easy lettering because a lot of time is already going into the borders of this layout. And then I'm going to trace in the shape of that curved edge. Using that edge outline as a guide, I'm going to create another border layout here and just try to fill in those negative spaces. So here I'm just showing you how to do a Dutch door setup for 2 different weeks. If you wanted to do this Dutch door setup for the entire month so that you don't have to do as many illustrations, you could go ahead and cut off 3 pages with that same curved line and just do every weekly layout the same as you see here. So here's what it looks like at the end with both of the borders completely finished. For the next spread, I started off with that same border that you've already seen me do like 3 times, and this time I started off in my sketchbook actually because I'm going to be cutting this out. It's optional to do this in a separate sketchbook. You can do this in your bullet journal. I just thought it would be easier to cut out, and also I wouldn't waste pages in my bullet journal. I'm going to cut a loose line around this edge. You don't have to be too fussy and get right up to the edge of the illustrations. I just painted on one side of this paper, but I do want to have this double-sided so that it can go in the middle of my journal and there will be illustrations on both sides, kind of like I'm showing you here. In order to do this easily, I held my paper up to a sunny window, and this way you can really easily see the lines on the other side and you can kind of trace everything so that you don't have to come up with a completely new layout, and you'll have a pretty good mirror image of the illustration that you did on the other side. So that's just a little trick that makes things a little bit easier for you. And once I have that all traced with my pencil, I'm going in with my pen and tracing those lines, and you know the drill. I'm just going to fill in this border and watercolor it again with my Inktense paint. For this one, I wanted to add a little bit of a blue wash to the background because I wanted to stand out a little bit from the pages that it's going to go on top of. I just diluted my blue paint with a lot of water just to give it that little tint. And I really like using this Inktense paint because it doesn't move around again or get reactivated with water. So once all of your green herbs are dry, you can go over with that blue tint and you don't have to be too careful about it because nothing is really going to bleed. And then I'm going to attach my little border illustration into my journal here, just using some washi tape. I started off with this black floral washi tape, but then I thought it was a little too disruptive, especially when I spent so much time painting and illustrating this piece. I really wanted it to stand out, so I actually switched that out for a more translucent piece of washi tape, a clear one with green triangles, and I actually wanted to show you that I completely finished this roll, which has never happened to me before, so I'm very proud of that. And for those of you who have washi tape, you know how long those things can last. So I thought I would just share this proud moment with you guys. On the other side, I had to go back and use that leaf washi since I did run out of that green triangle washi, but I think that one works really well also. For my last weekly spread, I'm doing a pretty different look than the other ones just to have a different option. I started off by just penciling in the numbers for each of the dates in this blocky bubble letter sort of type, and I'm going to be weaving in little tiny illustrations of the herbs in front of and behind these numbers. So it helps to have this penciled in first because you want to have those spaces where the herbs overlap on top of those letters so that it looks more dimensional. I did try to show as many examples as I could of these herbs, but I will say that some of them are definitely easier to incorporate. The ones that are longer or have vines, such as thyme, rosemary, and chives, would definitely be my choice if you just want to choose a couple different variations. This is a much more structured layout than the other ones that I've done, so if you like things with boxes, this might be more your speed. I'm just filling in some of the empty spaces with extra boxes and washi tape just for different to-do lists and things like that. Then to fill in these numbers and little leaves, I didn't really want to use watercolor because these are really fine details and they're much smaller illustrations than the other ones I was doing in the other spreads. So I brought out my Stabilo pens, which are really fine tipped pens, and I have a few shades of green in here, so I thought that would be perfect to use, and I'm just coloring those in really quickly. Even though the illustrations look really detailed, the coloring goes pretty quickly since they're very small areas to color in. And then for the actual numbers, I found this really nice light blue-gray kind of color that I thought would work really well with the shades of green that I was using for the herb foliage. And once that's all colored in, here's what the final spread looks like. And now I'm going to do a flip through of all the spreads for this month. It was a lot of illustration this month and it did get a little repetitive at times, but it was also strangely meditative and really soothing to do. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video and got some inspiration from this. Thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you again next time. Bye!